Welcome to Better Bedtime Chronicles. You're listening to Nicole.
And Bridget. Together, we have 15 years experience working directly with families struggling with sleep challenges.
We share stories, advice, and deep dives into all things sleep. Let's go.
How are you?
I'm good. What have you been up to?
I'm just so excited that it's October.
Me too.
Yay.
October 1st today, we're recording.
Is. Yes, we are. Hopefully we can get it up
soon. Yeah, because today we're actually talking about like very time-sensitive things.
We are. And we're rolling into this time of year where we have many sleep disruptions with holidays, daylight savings time.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Always a busy week. The days leading up, but especially the week after, any time change, I find my inbox.
For sure.
You too.
Oh, yeah. And the hilarious thing this year, like daylight savings is November 3rd. Halloween is the 31st. Like we're really packing it in that week.
Oh, you're right. And it's a school night, Halloween. Yeah. So if you're taking your littles trick-or-treating, it's a later night, and then you're going into the weekend, and we used to gain an hour as an adult, but now it feels like it sucks our souls right out.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about these great things today.
Yeah, we're all about the sleep disruptions.
Yes, and how do we manage these sleep disruptions? So we're going to get into that. We, on a personal side of things, we're excited because we're going to do our first Friendsgiving.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
In our neighborhood. Yeah, we're hosting a little Thanksgiving dinner with our friends.
Yes.
Doing a pool dip in the freezing cold.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, that'll be good.
The kids only, not the adults.
Yes.
Well, maybe some adults.
I'll watch from inside.
Yeah, right.
I finally reached that point where I have to watch the pool, but I don't have to be in the pool. It's really liberating.
Have 3 swimmers.
3 swimmers. Yep. It's a nice feeling for sure.
Yeah, that does feel good. I only have 2. I have still one.
You're going to be
one
there
to
soon.
go.
Yeah, it feels nice. Even like when you get to lessons and don't have to be in there, it's like, oh my God, it's so much better. You have like a few minutes to just not be dealing with a wet bathing suit.
Yeah, that's always a win.
It is nice. And I'm especially excited that you are getting a turkey from my sister's farm. Makes me happy. So my sister raises turkeys in Waterford, and she is giving us a turkey to use for our Friendsgiving, or we're getting one for her. And they're big, amazing turkeys. And I've met them when they were 1 day old, and I've fed them
full
a few times.
circle.
So they're full circle. Yes.
Trigger warning to the
Sorry
vegetarians.
for the veggies. Yeah, they're very well loved. I can tell you that. So
yeah, that's the best way to do it, right?
Yes,
Farm fresh, local.
Yeah, very well loved.
Supporting a small business.
You got it. Yeah, all those good things. Live a nice full life. So so let's get into it. We're going to go over things like how to accommodate the daylight savings change, which, as we said, is coming up. Holidays as well, how to handle when your little one is sick and managing their sleep, especially the moments after they're starting to recover. And then any sort of developmental leap that could impact sleep. As you listen to this, you probably already have been through that, I'm sure. And then teething as well.
Yeah, sounds good. So why don't we start by talking about daylight savings time? Tell us what kind of shitty sleep disruptions happen for DST.
And they really do. And this kind of boils down, we have a list of things you want to talk about on this podcast as time goes on. And one of them is like, babies don't care about a number on the clock. And I think this is so true for this. Yeah. Like, they don't care. This is something man-made. It's something we do and have done, I think, since the very early 1900s. I think it's like 1906 or something crazy when daylight savings began. And there's bills in action right now in Canada to try to eliminate it. And some states already have, which is really cool.
Them.
Lucky. Arizona's one of them. It's the worst.
It's so annoying.
It is so annoying.
Do you know, like, there's increases in car accidents and heart attacks and all sorts of stuff statistically related to DST?
Yes, the Monday after. And accidents on the job because you need this. It's such an argument of like how important our sleep is for our overall like functioning. And so daylight savings is a terrible thing that we have to endure. Although on the bright side, we have a little more like daylight. In the mornings. I know we've been we have more
on the bright side.
On the bright, dun, 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 dun. So that is nice. So we know it has an important purpose, and it, sure, but hopefully it's not always a thing. But it is now. So how do we deal with it? And I think to start is just like it doesn't mean anything to our little ones. It's us having to sort of, I don't want to say manipulate time, but like be
massage their schedule.
Yeah, finesse and get them like slowly easing them into what is the new time, because it's just not naturally in their bones.
Okay, so talk me through this. Math is not my strong suit. When we fall back, what happens to the clock?
So I love that you're asking this because I've messed this up many times. And we actually are going to so we have a couple links that we'll include in the episode details. And one is from our trusted sleep tracker program that we really like too, which is Huckleberry. And they have a fantastic article that Nicole mentioned is updated every time change. It's a really great resource. We're going to link that there if you want like a something to follow along with, to just tell you what to do there. But for fall, we fall back, we're gaining an hour. So that means that at 2-ish a.m. overnight on Saturday night into Sunday morning, it's going to go back 1 hour. So you might wake up and look at your phone and you hear your baby awake and it's like 5:05, but really for them, it's actually 6:05.
Right.
So if their normals is 6 o'clock and you're like, oh my God, they're up at 5:05. That feels really weird to me. But for them, it is 6:05.
That's their normal wake time. Yeah. Which is why I hate the fall one the worst.
Yeah.
Because it is harder. You have to keep them up later. Yeah. Right. Stretch their bedtime, especially for, the 6 to 15-month-old kiddos. That's a tricky age time for that, stretching them late. And then also they rise early, which is a real pain in the ass too.
That's what's going to be, I think for us, and people deal with it. They're living with it. It's hard. Of course, we have children too, but the early morning wakings are such a pain in the ass with this. And some people who are already dealing with early morning wakings going into the time change, it's just like the cherry on top. It's terrifying. It is. It feels very scary. So just to take the step back and say, the number on the clock means nothing to my infant. It's there, or your toddler, however old your kid is. It's really more about like their natural sleep wake cycle, right? And so how can we gently manipulate that or change that, finesse that? And it's often in shorter increments, 15 to 20 minutes. It's not like we don't always take the hour leap right away, like almost never, I think, with babies. It's more, okay, we're going to do 15 to 20 minutes different for a couple days, and then 15, 20, and then you do that a couple times over a week or a few days, and you should be in sync with the new time.
Yeah, you can kind of spend the week leading up to daylight savings, or start on the day of daylight savings, but leading up to it, just kind of gradually pushing the schedule.
That's a good point too. And I think depending on your dynamic or your work and things like that, what you got going on, if you can start earlier, it makes it it just seems a little bit more manageable when you are like forced into it.
Yeah, it's less heartbreaking when you see like 5:45 instead of 5 o'clock, right?
Yeah, and that's so true. And then knowing that they're going to be, maybe more tired or have more stamina because the time's not quite right. So just that, again, another push for baby ladder, going by their cues is always nice too. But you might stretch them that extra like 15, 20 minutes to try to get them to that better spot.
Yeah, and I generally tell families just, expect kind of about a week of disrupted sleep. Like as you're kind of preparing, you could start it in advance, or it can happen after. If you're lucky, it'll be less than that. But if you're anticipating about a week, you're probably like realistically understanding what's going to happen to sleep. And that's about amount of time it takes to adjust to that hour.
I would say that too. And we meant to mention this as well, that this is all assuming that sleep's going okay.
Yes.
You, right? Like you're in a decent routine.
Everything we talk about is assuming you're already starting from a good place.
Yeah, that's true. So like just to remind you, in case you're curious, like we help people get their sleep back on track, often through sleep training or making big changes around often sleep timing, prep for sleep, and how the parent responds to sleep. Of course, the environment our little ones sleep in as well. So when we come in with this information, like this piece alone would not be the solution to like a major sleep challenge going on. It's more, this is what's disrupting your already decent sleep. And so these are some things that you can do, certainly. So, and again, like always using that white noise, blackout blinds, things like that to make sure that we're having the sleep environment be as great as we can. And just that little bit of flexibility and understanding that this is a big adjustment for them too.
The nice thing about the fall daylight savings time is that it is dark for the night. In the spring, it becomes tricky because all of a sudden they're exposed to light at a time when they weren't normally. But for this, like it's already we already have a 12-hour night.
So cozy,
which is so nice. Yeah,
hibernation-y. Yeah, it is, because spring it does become. That's another every daylight savings. Like I should just clear my week. That honestly, and be like ready for
the emails.
Yes, it's a lot.
You know what's cool? This is a new observation I've made as the parent of school-age children. Daylight savings is kind of less impactful now as they get older. But through the summer, my kids are staying up like later and later and later, right? And then when school starts, like it's kind of a stretch to get them into bed at a reasonable time. So they're still up kind of later than average most nights. Daylight savings is going to allow us to get that bedtime back earlier again and give them more sleep that they need when it is like kind of the school year. So I think that's kind of a win.
That is a win. I like that. And perfect timing for like this hibernation-y season that we're in.
Yeah.
And with just holidays and stuff that comes up that can be disruptive, it's nice to maintain that nice early bedtime. So this is a natural sort of segue into that.
So what's next? Holidays, I guess.
Yeah, let's get into it. So a couple big ones coming up. Now, this could be really for anything. You have a wedding to attend or some kind of occasion that's really going to mess up your bedtime or a nap. But we're thinking specifically around trick-or-treating. So evening, later than usual, maybe some candy, right? They're not always what they're having before bed. And then holidays, like the holiday season in December with sometimes overnight travel or staying at people's houses. What do you think is your best practice for approaching a season like this? Or even let's go with trick-or-treating to start. What do you do?
My strategy at this time of year, because it is busy, there are more kind of activities than normal, at least in my household, is to try and have like really solid sleep foundation outside of the holiday day, right? So in the week leading up to Halloween, for example, I'm going to do my best to get my kiddos in bed at reasonable times, kind of just like prep them for success. So knowing that we're going to have a later night towards the end of the week, you know, we'll certainly like be more rigid with our structure earlier in the week. So starting from a place of rest is, I think, key.
Yes. Well said.
Yeah. And then the day of, you know, our strategy, I like flexibility. Like to me, that's important. I want my kids to have these like, you know, experiences and stuff. And so I try and let go a little bit of the control that I have around their sleep, knowing that I can get right back on track the next day, right? So just a little bit of kind of acceptance of what's going to happen and how it's going to be. It can be really stressful if you're aware that your schedule is about to get kind of screwed up, and oftentimes it's a little bit out of your control, right? Like, so say you go over, for example, to a family's house for dinner and dinner's not served until it's like, you know, an hour from bedtime, and you're like, how am I going to figure this out? That can be anxiety provoking. So one piece of this for me is just like regulating my own feelings about how this like sleep disruption is going to play out, and just trying to have a little bit of acceptance and some flexibility as I head into the event.
Very wise words. I think that's often the biggest. Yeah, you are. You really are. Often the biggest piece, I think, is our concern about it, our anxiety about it, and just our frustration, and what we carry that into it. And that's exactly a perfect example of the dinner's not going to be ready on time, and we're here, we don't have any of our stuff, let's say. And so having just relax, like chill. And you're right. And coming from a place of like, we are very routine. The standard at our home is very routine sleep, same sleep environment. They're having good sleep. So when a night like that does happen, and it's like they're having M&Ms before bed, or they're doing whatever as part of this trick-or-treating stuff, then it doesn't feel so catastrophic in that moment.
You can trust that the systems you've got in place are going to be effective, and you know they'll catch up. They definitely will. Maybe they'll wake up early the next morning. That's kind of an annoyance, especially with younger kiddos.
Yes.
My kids have finally started like sleeping in when they're up late, which is an amazing benchmark.
It is amazing.
But that takes a while.
It does take a while, and I wouldn't even like listening to this like hold your breath waiting for that, because I feel like it can be a long time.
Oh, and it's on and off, right? Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So expecting an early rise the morning after a late night is to be expected.
And then what comes along with that of maybe being a bit overtired and you're ready for that, and maybe it means that's the lower key day the next day, and the next night after an outing, after a trick or treat, or after you're at a wedding or whatever it might be, it can be tempting to be flexible and say, well, they had a long night the night before, let me allow this. And then it becomes a slippery slope.
Yeah.
So the next night after, when you're home, it's really important to get right back to business as usual and have that same sleep hygiene as you always have. And I don't know about you, but I can definitely think of many times we get a booking from someone whose sleep is going terribly, and their story begins at a night where we went to something, or I was out for the night, or this happened, and then I was flexible.
There's always like that inciting incident, travel, illness,
came back, from this,
any of it.
And now this happened because, or even it can go into like when there's a big change, like, I had a new baby, or this happened, so I felt bad for the toddler, and then I let them do this, and now it's 6 months later and they run the house, right? Or whatever it might be. So you're not alone. Definitely been in that boat before. But allowing, as Nicole says, this like flexibility and kind of ease around the night of the event. and then right back at it the next day.
I talk to my clients a lot about the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time we're looking for like consistent sleep in their own sleep space on their schedule, kind of like, you know, following the structure of the sleep as you've designed it in your home. And then 20% of the time allowing for flexibility and freedom. And so that's a later bedtime or sleeping in a pack and play or a stroller or whatever. And the reason that we advocate for that 80-20 rule is because we do want to facilitate flexibility for our kiddos. How many times have you had like an initial client consult and they're like, well, I don't want my kid to be the kid who can only sleep in their own bedroom, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want that either. That's not the goal here, right? So we definitely want to be able to facilitate flexibility for our kids with their sleep. And having fun stuff like this come up once in a while is part of you know, allowing that to be their experience.
Yeah, to have sort of the best of both worlds. 80-20 is a great lens, I think, to be, if you're home and you can and it looks this way, that's great. But also live your life. Yeah. And then when you come back, getting right back to it is a great way to be. So that's a really great point about the holidays and just enjoying yourself. What about, let's take it a step further and say, as the holidays come, I need to have, let's say I need to stay somewhere later than bedtime, but I also am not sleeping over. This is a question we get too. So what are your thoughts there?
Okay, so I have two strategies that I use in this scenario. One of them is I love like a PJ at the party. So, and lots of families do this. So they'll bring kind of all of the sleep gear, get the kids totally ready for bed at the party, and then put them in the car and drive home. And so kiddos fall asleep on the ride home. They get transferred into their beds at home. Because we have this great sleep hygiene in place, kids are usually pretty flexible and kind of are okay with that transfer. Maybe they need an extra song just to tuck them in. But generally that goes pretty well for many of the families that we work with. And my other strategy is sometimes I'll put a kiddo down in a playpen at a party and then transfer them in the middle of the night. So that happens less now in my life because my kids are getting older. But yeah, like if we had a dinner to go to or whatever, especially when I had one kid, maybe I'd throw her in a playpen and then just move her at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Again, it actually goes pretty well, especially when they're still eating in the night, because you can just add a feed in at that time to allow them to make the transfer go more easily. But again, building flexibility is key. So you won't be able to do it unless you do it, unless you try it, right? And it can be really intimidating to start. Yeah. But I always say to families, if this is going to be part of your life, you got to make it part of your life. You got to do it.
You do. I'm glad you mentioned that intimidating piece, because especially when you're in the trenches with a young child and sleep is sparse, or you're just, even when they're sleeping decently, it's still exhausting, right? So to sign yourself up for what could be a really crappy night of sleep, it's like you might be choosy with what you do that for. That's okay. That's okay to do that. I love the two scenarios you gave. Those are the same I give to a client as an option, and depending often when are we leaving this place? Like if bedtime is usually 7 and you plan to leave by 7:30, 7:45, I wouldn't put them down, right? You do the pajama thing and it's very cute and good night, and you pop them into the car seat and off you go. But if it's way later, they definitely don't really have the capacity to stay awake without
not at the younger ages. As they get older, there's more flexibility.
They are, and you know your baby or your kid better than anyone to know, like, they love a party, they can handle it, you're not going to have a catastrophe of a fallout. I know in my family sometimes there would be comments about, like, just let them stay up or just keep them up and pass them around, and I'm like, no, like, I know what that's going to mean for this baby. Terrible. It's gonna be terrible. I'm not doing it. So I'm putting them down, and at the end of the day, and even though it doesn't feel this way sometimes, you are the one in charge and can say these things, even if there are strong feelings from others, well-meaning, lovely relatives.
You're talking about something so important too, which another piece of this is that boundary. So can you talk a little bit about, like, how do we set those boundaries as we're heading into this holiday season? What are some good strategies for talking to our family about what our sleep needs are for our kiddos? I'm
glad you asked this, and I will admit openly that I was terrible at this when I became a mom. It felt mean, rude even. I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, especially family that I love so much and I care so much about, and they have well-meaning and loving opinions or ideas about what to do around sleep or this particular party, let's say, or event. But I know this child better, and I know what they need, and I can even feel in my chest, like, this feeling I would have back then. This is almost 13 years ago now for me, when I became a mom, and how I had some help with learning how to set boundaries. I needed help with it.
Bridget's a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah, still a little bit. It's hard though. And so I had basically a therapist help me learn how to set boundaries, and said it to me so simply, like, people can't read your mind. No one else is going to do this for this baby besides you, or you or your partner, whoever's making the call here or whatever. It has to be you, and you have to be so specific and simple about it. And not in any rude way, but even if the person you're trying to communicate this with is a grown adult, you almost have to do it like they're a kid. This is not available right now.
Yeah.
This is what will be happening.
Right.
And
you don't want to leave wiggle room.
You can't, because you leave an inch, you're done. And so you have to be, this is where they'll be sleeping. This is what time we're leaving. And there were times where looking back, I'm like, should I have done this? But there were times where there would be this long, lovely dinner or long process, but it would be so stressful to our situation that sometimes you'd say, you know what, you guys enjoy, we're going to actually deke out.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do that. And also surrounding yourself with people who are going to be okay with that. And I can tell you, in all honesty, we weren't always, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we were snipping that person away. There's still people in our lives, but you have to get comfortable setting boundaries, not only with sleep, but parenting in general. What foods are they allowed? What are they having access to? And I really regret earlier on not realizing it's actually kinder to be a bit of a, I don't know, there's this saying, you have to be cruel to be kind sometimes.
Right.
And I mean, that's a heavy word, but yeah, it's okay for you to, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm taking care of my child. And if you have feelings about that, that's certainly outside of my responsibility. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's hard. It's interesting because I do a lot of work in the perinatal mental health realm. And I spend so much time talking about, I hear this over and over again from moms. It's easier to set boundaries for our kids than it is to set for ourselves. So a lot of times, and when I made a joke about recovering people pleasers, but women of our generation are often people pleasers as a result of all sorts of societal pressures. And in those moments, we can kind of start building our capacity to set boundaries across our lives with our children. That's where these things often begin. So I'll talk to a parent who's like, yeah, I had to tell my mother-in-law that I wasn't going to blah, blah, blah. And that was the first time I've ever actually set a boundary like that. And that kind of opens the door for having these more consistent boundaries across. But our kids give us kind of a motivation to assert those boundaries. Obviously, I think that it's just as important that we set boundaries for ourselves as we do for our children. But often that's a nice gateway to finding your voice in that way.
Well said. And I felt this way. I'm curious if you find others feel this way. Once you do it once.
Oh man, 100%.
You cross this threshold. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I have a say. I don't have to let you drop in at any hour.
Yeah.
I don't have to let you do this. Right.
Yeah,
it's really liberating to get to set and stand firm in this boundary. And there's probably a smarter way of saying this about it'll be tested.
Yes.
And that's how you're doing it, is someone's going to have feelings about it. They're going to push it, and it can be awkward. It certainly was for us.
Absolutely.
To stand and say, oh, no, all done. We're not doing that. Right. It's a hard thing to do.
It's funny you say that too, because the thing about boundaries, this is another thing I say in therapy all the time, which is boundaries are not about other people's behavior. They're about your own behavior. So you're not setting a boundary saying you can't do this, you can't do that. You're if we need to take our kid home to bed, we're going to leave. This is about our behavior and the choices we're going to make. And the thing about that is you can't control how someone else feels about that. We've talked about this, I think, in other episodes too, but to remind yourself, it's your job to set the boundaries, and it's other people's jobs to have feelings about that. And their feelings are very valid and reasonable, right? But the nice thing is, the great thing about, having practice at this and setting those boundaries over and over again is eventually you realize it's actually not as hard as you thought it was. And it becomes kind of almost easy, especially with the people who love and care about you, right? There are prickly moments, absolutely. But once you get over that hump, then there's this mutual respect and understanding. And that feels really good.
It does feel really good. And I credit my mother-in-law with this, because she's very, she's always been so gracious and such a strong, independent woman. I have so much respect for her. And I feel that's one of the keys to the way we are, is we can be direct with each other, even when it does feel prickly or a little awkward, and say oh, I actually don't love that, or and she's always been so to me, she could be the poster of mother-in-laws, because she's just been so lovely.
That's so nice.
And it doesn't always go that way, right?
I know. We're both pretty privileged with our,
I think
our
so.
mother-in-law situations.
Yeah, the extended fam, like, and it doesn't always go that way. And I've certainly had to make, you know, hard choices around it, and it's tough. But you have this life, you have these little ones, and no one else is going to like fiercely protect them and their needs, whether it be sleep, you know, mentally, whatever it might be, than their parents. And sometimes it's awkward. And I certainly, as Nicole says, like, even now, I'm like, please like me, be my friend. Why don't you like me? Why don't you? Like, I totally have this thing. And it's hard because sometimes you say things that they're like, well, no, I don't like that. I don't like that you're making them have a nap during the party, right? Or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So all this to say, with the holidays or the things being away, is like, just lean into it, have a good time, but get home, business as usual. We're going to link our blog in the link area as well on how to manage some of these holiday things as well. Let's go into illness.
Yeah, illness is kind of related to holidays in a way because often, so when I talk to families about the common things that disrupt sleep, illness is one where I say you should modify, right? So you should break your rules. You should, and you often have to, for reasons like, for example, giving medicine at times when they're supposed to be sleeping, or checking for fever, or sometimes you need to co-sleep if they're having trouble breathing. Like, there's all sorts of reasons why you're going to break the rules that you've, you know, previously set up. And that's encouraged. We have to meet our kids' needs, right? And that's always the first thing. So if a kid has a need that needs to be met and it interferes with a sleep expectation in the household, unfortunately, then the need has to be met first. Yeah. So I say to families, modify until they're starting to be well again, and then immediately go back to routine. And that is the key, is the immediately return to routine piece. What do you think?
Same. And it's like these stories of, it began at this
Yes.
time. We had an ear infection and then it turned into 4 months of this.
Yes.
Because you're right. You do have to modify, be responsive with whether it be medicine or remedy, or you're just comforting them, whatever. But then once they're better, well, I really liked that, right?
Yeah.
I really like you. I'm in your bed, or I liked you being right beside me. And so they'll seek that, and that's totally normal, but you should definitely get back onto your normal thing. And then another question sometimes we'll get is, well, how do I know when to intervene or when to modify? How sick should they be? What symptoms should they have? Yeah. And I don't know. I say this phrase, like, when in doubt, check them out always. And if it's fever, breathing related, like, you might bring a bed, like a mattress or something, to sleep on their floor in their room, to be close by, or if you're comfortable with them coming to you, whatever works well for you. I'm a fan of going to them to try to keep their sleep environment consistent. Yeah. Not only to keep good sleep long term, but we know that's where they likely do get their best sleep at this point, right? So if it's a bit of sniffly or a little, not like a tiny runny nose, and they're otherwise fine, like, I would be inclined to like continue as usual. For sure. But if it's something that you're worried about, always go in and check in, intervene, even if it does disrupt sleep, like we're saying with a holiday or with sickness or whatever it might be. You can respond with those things, but then otherwise, give them the chance to. If it's not going well, then I think you got to you do survival mode. For sure.
For sure. Yeah. And you're the expert of your own kid. So you understand like what their needs are in those moments, and how sick they are and how much support they need, I guess. Interestingly, teething is the exact opposite of this.
It is, because it's never ending.
So tell us about teething, Bridget.
So it's forever. It feels like it can go on for so long. And if we stopped what we're doing for teething, you might never get to a point of consistent sleep or having good routine, like structure there, because you'll see them chomp on their hand, or they have some rosy cheeks, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do it tonight because they have teething pain. But that's just something that comes along with infancy and toddlerhood, right? And so it is different with teething. We do definitely recommend responding with pain relief or whatever you do.
Whatever your strategies are, yeah.
Some people
whether they're like, homeopathic or medication or whatever.
Yeah, or if they're breastfed a little bit, another feed that night, whatever, if you must. But so respond with something if you do use any of those things, but otherwise, like, let them be, truly.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about the sleep training is after kiddos have the capacity to self-soothe and have the capacity to put themselves back to sleep if they wake with minor disruption, they actually handle these bumps in the road a lot better because they do have some skill set. So they'll call out, actually, interestingly, a client reached out and had a question. She said something like, do you think that kids who are sleep trained learn not to call out when they need you? And I was like, no, it could not be further from the truth. I think what sleep training does is it actually teaches kids to call when they need you and to not call when they don't.
Yeah.
And so interestingly, with the illness, the teething, all the stuff, like kiddos who have been through that sleep training, they do have the skills to identify when they need a parent or when they don't. So at least, often in my house, my kids are more likely to call if they need something. And if they're calling, I can guess pretty consistently that they do have an unmet need, right? And that's really nice. It's really nice to understand the difference between waking because they've just, they're a little annoyed by their tooth, or waking because they're in pain with their tooth, right?
Right. That's a good point too, because when you're not having good sleep going on at home, so things are like not happening, they're not settling well, or they're having, difficult nights, it's really hard to differentiate, like, are they having a tricky sleep night, or are they teething, or is their ear bothering them? And this is what you run through this like list of you're not sure. So another great reason to have made sleep a priority, gone through some kind of sleep changes if needed, and have good sleep going on is that when these things do happen, teething or whatever, you're like, you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, something's
you
up.
can understand what their needs are in those moments. It's not as unpredictable.
That's right. You don't have to guess so much because it's not a sleep thing. So it must be they're in pain. Here's what we offer you type thing, or a cold compress, whatever kind of thing you do. And then otherwise let them be, because we also know the better they sleep, the better they'll recover from a common cold, being sick, or having some pain. We know that sleep is really what we need to get through these things.
Okay, so our final sleep disruptor that we're going to discuss today is developmental milestones, or leaps.
Yes.
Anytime I get an email from someone and they're like, their week's been weird, they're blah, 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 and they're a little panicked, I always say, are they illness, teething, or developmental milestones? That's my first question. Because I want to understand, like, is sleep disrupted because it's a sleep issue, or does it have something to do with one of these three things? The developmental milestone one is funny because they're often doing hilarious things when they've hit a developmental milestone. Do you have emails like that sometimes?
Yeah, it's like they went brrr.
Yeah, and they just spent hours going
yeah. Or standing
forever. Standing. Oh my gosh. One of my kids, I think it was Ophelia, she used to stand, and she would stand up and she would scream bloody murder because she didn't know how to get back down. Yes. And she would just get stuck standing in her crib. It drove me nuts.
So normal. I just posted on our Instagram a reel about a baby I stayed with the other night, and she just stood there forever.
Oh yeah.
It's the cutest thing. But it's like, if they can, they will, right as they learn.
They love to practice their skills in their crib.
Yeah. And that's frustrating because we're like, go to sleep. Yeah. But it brings up this point of like, we can't force them to sleep. We're just getting them ready for bed, and sleep will come. So if they practice the standing, the or whatever noise,
rolling, crawling,
rocking back and forth, whatever it might be, it's like, oh my gosh, should I go in and do something? No. As long as they're safe and they're okay in there, like, I would let them be,
for sure,
to be honest.
Let them practice.
Let them go through it. And so many, as you can imagine, there's like an endless list of things they're learning that sometimes you're like, that's it. That's all it is. It's causing all this sleep issue, but like, that matters a lot, and it's good overall. We want them to go through these leaps and learn all the things. And the crummy thing is, it can impact sleep. I definitely notice a pattern of age groups we hear a lot more inquiries on, the sort of telltale sleep regressions, if you want to call it that. We do have a podcast episode about some of these things too. Is 4 months, 9-ish months, and 18 months. And it could be anywhere in there, like 8 to 10 months too, where there's a lot of interesting conversations, like the separation anxiety. I'm using quotes like you can see me, but is it that they're having a difficult time separating, or they're just learning something? But even with all this, whether they're learning something or they might be, we don't really know, it is just as important as ever to have the same sleep hygiene.
Yeah. Consistency for developmental milestones, just like teething.
Just like teething. So really the only thing we are modifying for is if we're ill in a way that they need more attention or medicine, whatever it might be, or if it's a night out, like trick-or-treating, like a holiday or a wedding or whatever.
Yeah. The other thing with the developmental leaps that's helpful is just daytime practice. So I'll often tell families, especially for the standing one, right? Like the strategy there with Ophelia was that I put her in her crib when she was awake and helped her learn how to get herself down.
That's smart.
Another one, so this one comes up all the time. Tell me what you think about this. Parents will say things like, oh, they keep rolling onto their tummies and I keep having to flip them back onto their backs, or oh, they keep standing and I have to keep laying them back down. Now we're stuck in a game. Now they stand up at the minute I leave the room, and then I lay them back down and they stand right back up, and I've been in there 30 times. What do I do? How do you handle that?
Yeah. So what I would say is the daytime thing as well. So definitely practice during the day. Same with rolling. And if they're on their tummy and parents worry about that, is there's like a baby sushi roll that you kind of lay a blanket out during the day. and you like roll them up a bit, let them find their way over. There's probably a better way to describe this, but like going through some type of tummy time, neck strength building, that sort of thing, and practicing with the standing as well. But if they're in the crib and the crib is safe, which we always advocate for, empty crib, firm mattress, there's no risk of them falling out when they stand up because you've now lowered the crib, is let them be.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to let them kind of hang out in an upright position. I mean, they might fall over, but like they're going to fall on a very soft mattress.
They are. Yeah.
Right.
And if you're really worried and they're starting to get drowsy as they're standing there, you could go in and lay them down. Yeah. It could be disruptive to them, but if that's more important to you than letting them tumble down, it's okay to get
Safety's
in there.
A priority.
Yeah.
But
otherwise,
if they're safe,
let them. Let them be. Let them fumble their way down. This baby that if you're on our Instagram, you can see on our reels, she stood there for a good while. And then I said to the mom, go in and lay her down. She did get back up. And then the next time she went down. And that was a baby who for 14 months slept beside her mom.
Right.
And the night one, she stood there like, what? I don't know that I have to get. And any kid we see who we sleep train and they're able to stand, they will stand.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And that's okay. And so if you're worried again, you go in or, put them down. But you can't go up, down, up, down. It's a game.
No. Don't play the game.
Yeah, don't play the game.
I have the funniest picture of my friend's kiddo. She fell asleep standing up, and she spent 2 nights of her life sleeping standing up. She like made herself a comfy little pillow of her arm on the side of her crib, and like was just hell-bent. Like my friend obviously went in, tried to lay her down, blah blah. They played the game for a while, and then eventually she's like, I don't know, she wants to sleep standing up. I'm like, just let her. It's gonna last a night or two, and then it'll be over. And it did.
That's right.
It was just 2 nights of her. But I have like all these cute little screenshots from the camera of her just like sleeping standing up.
Oh my god,
it's the cutest thing.
I love it.
And she's fine, of course. Like nothing happened as a result of that.
Yeah. But doesn't this too show like how, you get it, why people will be like, well, this isn't working.
Yeah.
And they're doing this, it's not going to work. But like just let them find their position, whatever it might be, awkward as ever, and just let them do it because they will find their way. Yeah. They will get back to sleep. All these things come down the pipeline, whether we want it to or not. Illness, teething, holidays, whatever it might be, they're coming. So you just I love the way you started. Just set down our own expectations and anxieties about it and just try to live with it, go with it, be a bit flexible, and then right back on it as soon as that is over. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, sleep is never going to be perfect. So, letting go of that expectation is really important. We're just hoping for the best most nights for everybody.
I like that. And I think about when I first started this business almost 10 years ago now, which is insane. And I was like, oh yeah, you just sleep train, you're good to go forever. I'm like, no. Over time I learned, I'm like, nope, we just can do what we can do. Yeah. We can't force them to fall asleep. We can't prevent a night waking, but we can control how we respond. And that's where your power really lies. As always, if you need help from us, you can book at betterbedtime.ca. We also are very open to hearing suggestions on what you'd want to hear about next. So please leave us a comment or shoot us a message, and we'd love to hear from you. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening. Just remember, the shit is hard, but you are killing it.
To stay in touch, you can find us at betterbedtime.ca.